A report out this week by the Congressional Research Service finds that the largest federal budget item is spending on welfare programs. They say there are 83 programs that make up welfare, with the federal government spending $745.84 billion on them. I'm going to start with Harry Perkinson on this issue. Do you buy that number, and isn't it something that does need to be drastically reduced?
I haven't seen the report, so I can't really address the individual components of it. You have to remember that we are still in a recession, basically, where it was very comparable to the Great Depression of the 30s, and it's going to take us some time to dig out of this, and we need people that are willing to work towards doing that. You're going to have huge government safety net usage when you have a poor economy, and the real key to this solving these problems we have is getting the economy going. And the way to do that is not cutting more taxes on rich people. You know, what we need to do is invest money in the infrastructure that helps us grow the economy in the future. And by doing that, we'll put people back to work, we'll reduce the load that we have in these government safety net programs, and things will come back more into balance. We'll be able to address the budget deficit and then our overall debt growth by making sure the economy is growing and people are back to work.
Scott Perry.
Well, in the state over the last year, I reported to my constituents that the welfare budget went from 39% of overall spending to 38%, which is, I think, indicative of Governor Corbett's initiative in concert with the House and the Senate, where we tightened up eligibility and really got realistic about who should be receiving welfare and for what things. In particular, some things, fraud. I know one of the gentlemen that sits next to me in the House said that he was at the cleaners and it was a brand new vehicle sitting outside running, and the gentleman inside, very nicely dressed, was paying for his dry cleaning with his access card. And he said, well, I wonder what's wrong with Pennsylvania today. And so while I sat and was very glad to sit on the Welfare Reform Task Force in the House, and we made a lot of recommendations, not all of them were applied. But again, I think the safety net that was envisioned for people that are down on their luck is really important, but we have to also honor the people that are paying the bills, which are the people that are working their jobs and paying their taxes. And the way we honor those folks is by making sure that only those who are in the greatest need receive it, and that not folks that aren't eligible to be in the state or aren't eligible to receive or are availing themselves to multiple programs simultaneously.
Mike Hockenberger.
Well, Mr. Perry talked about this as his experience in the state, and I firmly believe that that's where it should stay. I don't think that the federal government should be in charge of welfare. Instead of collecting the money to go towards welfare programs, it could stay in the states and do the best for those that are in most need. These kind of things are better addressed at the state level. The amount of fraud is in the billions. It's been estimated that I've seen. And the federal government does not have the resources to investigate all of these things from some bureaucracy in D.C. It has to be done through the states, and as Mr. Perry said, to determine those who most need it.
Harry Perkinson, what do you think about shifting the burden from the federal government to the state government when it comes to welfare?
Well, I think part of it can be shifted. The only problem with doing that is you get states that are a lot less concerned about the welfare of the people that really need it, and you wind up shifting populations, and so we want to avoid that. There's nothing wrong with going through the roles and making sure people that are on those roles belong there. There's nothing wrong with being efficient and being, making sure that people are honestly using the safety net program that they need to use. I fully advocate that. There's no problem with making government, efficient. There's no problem with making it, cost effective. I think that that's what government's supposed to be doing. And the only issue I have with giving more of it to the states is I see a great disparity between the states as to what kind of levels of support people that need it get, and you wind up having people migrating in order to take advantage of individual states.
Scott Perry.
What I'd like to say about the state-federal issue is we got to understand that under the veil of welfare, there are many, many programs, and we oftentimes key on the ones where somebody's abusing it, their cash assistance or something like that. But you got to remember, Medicaid is generally thought of as a welfare program, and maybe that's an unfair way of characterizing it. But we're a society who doesn't want to see our indigent population, those who can't fend for themselves, out on the street, and that's where Medicaid falls in. The issue with the federal government, though, is they take our tax money and then send it back to us through a prism of regulations and requirements that are inefficient for the states to have to manage. And I'd be a proponent of certainly reducing federal involvement. The best way to do that is for the federal government to block grant to the states that money which they've paid in that's coming back from Medicaid or other welfare programs for the states to spend most wisely.
Probably time for one more. The President's health care initiative was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court this past summer. Should it be left alone, overturned? If you want it overturned, what should be put in its place, if anything? And let's start with Scott Perry.
Well, I do believe it should be overturned. I am a repeal vote. I think it was a far overreach, and I think it was judicial activism as well on the part of the Supreme Court in their findings. I'm not an attorney, but that's just how I view it. So I do think that the program should be scrapped in its entirety, and in its place, something that's more consumer-driven. I'd like to see purchasing of insurance and health care needs across state lines, portability. I would also like to see the tax incentive, instead of going to business. Employers don't necessarily want to be in the health care business. They want to be in the business of whatever their business is. They want to provide benefits, but health care is very difficult, and of course it's very expensive. I think the tax incentives should go to the individual, and that will incentivize people to make the best healthcare choices. The other thing I'd like to see is tort reform on various levels, because I think that doctors are practicing preventive medicine to kind of dissuade lawyers from coming after them, and then that in turn will lower the cost of healthcare premiums, which will in turn open the market up to more people.
Mike Hoffenberg.
I'm also a repeal vote. I know the Supreme Court found it constitutional only as far as it being a tax. And because I want to eliminate federal taxes and change the tax structure, I think that could go along with that. I agree that portability and being able to purchase your health insurance across state lines is something that needs to be done. And tort reform is a reason why a lot of doctors, especially in childbirth, are leaving the field because of their insurance costs. So there's certainly things that we can look at, and I would certainly be in favor of people buying. We have to also look at the way insurance is handled. We use insurance for everything, from your regular doctor checkup every year. Do we really need insurance for that? Should insurance just be used for, when you have a catastrophic thing happen, or you have a disease that needs a lot of treatment? That's what insurance should be for, in my opinion, not your everyday care.
Harry Perkins.